It was late in the evening when Ryan Carter parked his old pickup truck behind the large building that housed Fresh Choice Inkyard's flagship cafeteria. The vehicle looked out of place among the sleek cars belonging to the staff who worked there during the day. But Ryan didn't care about appearances anymore. For now, he wasn't the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. He was just another cleaner trying to blend in. His real name might be Ryan Carter, but tonight, and for however long it took, he was Evan, a humble janitor. Ryan adjusted the plain, blue cap on his head, pulled down the sleeves of his slightly oversized uniform and grabbed a mop from the back seat. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment. After countless reports of inflated menu prices and customer complaints flooding his desk, Ryan knew something wasn't right. Multiple audits had failed to uncover anything suspicious, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. If no one else could find the problem, then maybe he needed to see it for himself. The cafeteria was empty except for a few cleaning staff scattered around the space. It was much quieter than Ryan expected, almost eerily so. During the day, this place buzzed with activity. Employees grabbing quick lunches, customers chatting over coffee, and the hum of machinery filling the air. Now, all he could hear was the soft swish of mops against tiled floors and the occasional clink of dishes being stacked away. As Ryan pushed open the heavy metal door leading inside, he spotted Lisa near the counter. She was scrubbing at a stubborn stain on the surface with a determined look on her face. Lisa had been working here for years, according to the employee files Ryan skimmed before starting his undercover mission. She seemed like someone who paid attention to details, which made her both useful and potentially dangerous if she figured out his true identity too soon. "Hey," Ryan said, keeping his voice low and friendly. "Need a hand?" Lisa glanced up, her hazel eyes narrowing slightly as she studied him. "You're new, aren't you?" she asked, tilting her head. There was a hint of skepticism in her tone, but also curiosity. "Yeah, first week," Ryan replied, flashing a small smile. He leaned the mop against the counter and picked up a cloth. "Name's Evan." "Lisa," she responded, returning to her task. "Don't get used to these late shifts. They're not fun, trust me." Ryan chuckled softly, though he wasn't sure how to respond beyond that. He didn't want to say too much or ask too many questions right away. Instead, he focused on helping Lisa clean the counter. As they worked side by side, Ryan couldn't help but notice how observant she was. Every time someone walked past them, even briefly, Lisa would pause and glance over her shoulder. It was subtle, but it told Ryan that she was wary of others, or perhaps just cautious by nature. After a while, Lisa broke the silence again. "So what brings you here? Most people don't choose this line of work unless they have to." Ryan hesitated for a split second before answering. He had rehearsed his backstory carefully, knowing full well that someone like Lisa would sniff out any inconsistencies. "Just looking for something steady," he said finally. "Used to work in construction, but my body can't handle it anymore. Figured I'd try this instead." Lisa nodded slowly, seemingly satisfied with his answer, "No. Well, welcome aboard, Evan. Just watch your back around here." Her words lingered in Ryan's mind long after their conversation ended. Watch your back? What did she mean by that? Was it just general advice, or was there something more going on? Ryan filed the comment away for later consideration as he continued cleaning. By midnight, most of the other cleaners had finished their tasks and left. Only Ryan and Lisa remained, along with Greg, the cafeteria supervisor. Greg was a tall, wiry man in his mid-40s with sharp features and an air of authority that bordered on arrogance. From what Ryan had gathered, Greg had been with Fresh Choice Inc. for nearly a decade. On paper, he seemed competent enough, but there was something unsettling about the way he carried himself. He always appeared tense, as if constantly waiting for something or someone to catch him off guard. Greg was in his office, which was tucked away in a corner of the cafeteria. Through the half-open blinds, Ryan could see him hunched over a desk, scribbling notes on a clipboard. Occasionally, Greg would glance toward the door, almost as if checking to make sure no one was watching. Ryan found this behavior odd, especially since everyone else had already gone home. Deciding to investigate further, Ryan pretended to sweep near Greg's office. He kept his movements slow and deliberate, careful not to draw attention to himself. From where he stood, he could hear snippets of Greg muttering under his breath. Words like inventory and invoices floated through the air, though Ryan couldn't quite piece together what Greg was talking about. Just as Ryan was about to move away, Lisa approached him. She held a spray bottle in one hand and a rag in the other. "What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Nothing," Ryan replied quickly, forcing a casual shrug. "Just making sure everything's tidy." Lisa frowned but didn't press the issue. Instead, she motioned for him to follow her to the supply closet. Once inside, she closed the door behind them, plunging the tiny room into semi-darkness. "Saw you hovering near Greg's office," she said bluntly. "If you're planning to stick around, you should know better than to attract his attention." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Why? Is he trouble?" Lisa hesitated, glancing toward the door as if expecting someone to barge in. When she spoke again, her voice was even quieter. "Let's just say, things aren't always what they seem around here. Some of us suspect there's funny business going on, but nobody dares to speak up." "Funny business?" Ryan's interest piqued. This was exactly the kind of information he came here to uncover. Still, he played it cool, nodding slowly as if digesting her words. "Thanks for the heads up," he said simply. "I'll keep that in mind." When they returned to the main area, Greg was still in his office, though he now seemed distracted by something on his computer screen. Ryan exchanged a meaningful look with Lisa before resuming his duties. Whatever Greg was hiding, Ryan was determined to find out. For now, though, he would bide his time, blending in and gathering clues bit by bit. As the clock ticked closer to 2 a.m., Ryan felt a mix of exhaustion and excitement wash over him. This was only his first shift, yet he had already learned so much. Between Lisa's cryptic warnings and Greg's suspicious behavior, Ryan knew he was onto something big. All he had to do was stay patient and stay hidden. With one final glance at Greg's office, Ryan put away his cleaning tools and headed toward the exit. Outside, the cool night air greeted him like an old friend. He climbed into his pickup truck, started the engine, and drove off into the darkness, already planning his next move. By his second week undercover, Ryan, or rather, Evan, had settled into a routine. He arrived at the cafeteria every night just after 10 o'clock, changed into his uniform, and began his shift alongside Lisa and a few other cleaners. At first, he had worried about standing out or making mistakes that might give him away, but so far no one seemed to suspect anything. To everyone else, he was just another face in the crowd, quietly doing his job and keeping to himself. Each night brought new observations, though none were as revealing as the ones from his first shift. Greg, the supervisor, continued to act strangely. He often stayed late long after most of the staff had left and spent hours hunched over paperwork in his office. Ryan noticed that Greg rarely interacted with the cleaning crew unless absolutely necessary. When he did speak, his tone was curt and dismissive, as if he didn't want anyone getting too close. One evening, while mopping near Greg's office, Ryan overheard him talking on the phone. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but Ryan caught fragments of the conversation. "You're sure they won't find out? And just adjust the numbers like we talked about." Ryan's heart raced. It sounded suspicious, but without more context, he couldn't be certain what Greg was referring to. Still, it was enough to make him even more determined to uncover the truth. Later that same night, Ryan found an opportunity to get closer to Greg's workspace. While Lisa was busy organizing supplies in the storage room, Ryan lingered near the office doorway, pretending to clean the baseboards. Inside, Greg sat at his desk, typing furiously on his laptop. Papers were strewn across the surface, and a calculator lay beside him, its buttons worn from frequent use. Ryan strained to read the documents but couldn't see them clearly from where he stood. As he worked, something unusual caught his eye. A small piece of paper had slipped off the edge of Greg's desk and landed on the floor near the filing cabinet. Ryan hesitated, debating whether to pick it up. If Greg noticed, it could raise suspicion, but if Ryan ignored it, he might miss an important clue. Taking a deep breath, he bent down to retrieve the crumpled sheet, casually sweeping it into his hand along with some dust and debris. Once he was safely out of sight, Ryan unfolded the paper and examined it under the dim light of the break room. What he saw made his stomach churn. Handwritten calculations covered the page, detailing price increases for various menu items. Next to each figure was a note indicating how much extra money would be generated per order. It wasn't official company stationery, which suggested Greg was doing this on his own, a clear sign of foul play. Ryan tucked the paper into his pocket, his mind racing. This was concrete evidence, but it wasn't enough to confront Greg directly. He needed more proof before taking any action. For now, he resolved to keep watching and gathering information. The next day, during a rare moment of downtime, Ryan shared his findings with Lisa. They were alone in the supply closet, sorting through cleaning products. Ryan pulled out the crumpled paper and showed it to her, explaining what he had discovered. "What do you think this means?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Lisa studied the document carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It looks like someone's been hiking up the prices," she said finally. "But why would Greg do that? Wouldn't management notice?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Ryan replied. "I think he's covering his tracks somehow. Maybe tampering with the invoices or forging receipts." Lisa nodded thoughtfully. "There have been rumors for a while now," she admitted. "People say stuff goes missing all the time. Supplies, ingredients, even cash from the register. No one knows for sure who's behind it, though." Ryan felt a surge of excitement mixed with frustration. Lisa's words confirmed his suspicions. Something shady was happening at the cafeteria, and Greg was likely at the center of it. But proving it wouldn't be easy. He needed to dig deeper, to find hard evidence that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence or hearsay. Over the following days, Ryan became increasingly vigilant. He paid close attention to Greg's movements, noting when he entered and exited the office, who he spoke to, and what he carried with him. One thing stood out. Greg frequently visited the supply room late at night, lugging boxes labeled with supplier logos. These trips seemed unnecessary, especially since deliveries usually arrived during the day. Curious, Ryan decided to investigate further. On his next shift, he followed Greg to the supply room, pretending to mop nearby. Through the partially open door, he watched as Greg opened one of the boxes and pulled out several bags marked with ingredient names. However, instead of storing them properly, Greg placed them inside a large duffel bag and zipped it shut. Ryan's pulse quickened. Was Greg stealing supplies? Or was there another explanation? Before he could think too much about it, Greg glanced toward the door, forcing Ryan to duck behind a stack of chairs. Once Greg left the room, Ryan slipped inside to take a closer look. Sure enough, the box Greg had opened contained fewer items than it should have based on the label. Someone had tampered with the shipment. Determined to document everything, Ryan retrieved his phone from his locker and started snapping photos whenever he could. He captured images of the altered invoices, the suspicious shipments, and even Greg's nervous demeanor. Each picture added another piece to the puzzle, bringing Ryan closer to unraveling the mystery. Despite his progress, Ryan knew he couldn't handle this alone forever. He trusted Lisa, but telling her too much risked blowing his cover. Instead, he relied on subtle hints and casual questions to gauge her willingness to help. One night, as they cleaned side by side, Ryan broached the subject indirectly. "Do you ever feel like something's not right around here?" he asked, feigning nonchalance. Lisa paused mid-scrub, her expression thoughtful. "All the time," she admitted. "But what can we do? We're just cleaners. Nobody listens to us." Ryan smiled faintly. "Maybe we don't have to wait for someone to listen. Maybe we can show them instead." Lisa looked at him curiously. "What are you saying, Evan?" For a moment, Ryan considered revealing his true identity, but he stopped himself, realizing it was still too soon. Instead, he offered a vague reassurance. Just that things aren't always what they seem, and sometimes the smallest details make the biggest difference. Though Lisa didn't respond immediately, Ryan could tell she was intrigued. Over the next few shifts, she began paying closer attention to Greg's behavior, occasionally sharing her observations with Ryan. Together, they formed an unspoken partnership, working quietly to expose the truth. As the days turned into weeks, Ryan grew more confident in his ability to navigate this unfamiliar world. He learned to anticipate Greg's habits, to blend seamlessly into the background, and to trust his instincts. Yet despite his growing competence, he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Sooner or later, Greg would slip up or catch on, and Ryan needed to be ready for either scenario. On a particularly quiet night, Ryan reflected on how far he'd come since his first shift. Back then, he had been unsure of himself, wary of being discovered. Now he felt like a different person entirely, resourceful, focused, and driven. The experience had taught him humility, patience, and the value of seeing things from a new perspective. But Ryan also knew the hardest part was yet to come. Uncovering corruption was one thing, confronting it was another. As he locked up his cleaning supplies and prepared to leave for the night, Ryan reminded himself why he had started this mission in the first place. Fresh Choice Inc. deserved better. Its employees deserved better. And its customers deserved honesty and integrity, not greed and deceit. With renewed determination, Ryan stepped out into the cool night air, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Ryan's investigation was beginning to take shape, but the pressure was mounting. Each new discovery brought him closer to exposing Greg's scheme, yet every step forward felt like walking a tightrope. One wrong move could ruin everything. Still, Ryan couldn't afford to stop now. He had come too far to turn back. One particularly quiet night, Ryan found himself alone in the cafeteria once again. Most of the cleaning staff had already finished their shifts, leaving only him and Greg behind. As usual, Greg stayed locked away in his office, engrossed in whatever secretive work he was doing. Ryan knew this was his chance to gather more evidence, but he also knew the risks involved. Earlier that evening, Lisa had mentioned overhearing a heated argument between Greg and Megan, one of the cashiers. According to Lisa, Megan had accused Greg of manipulating prices and demanded a share of the profits. Though Greg had brushed her off, Ryan sensed the tension between them was escalating. If Megan decided to blow the whistle, it could jeopardize Ryan's entire operation. Time was running out. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Ryan grabbed his mop and headed toward Greg's office. He moved slowly, deliberately, making sure not to draw attention to himself. When he reached the doorway, he peeked inside. Greg was bent over his desk, scribbling furiously on a pad of paper. His face was flushed and his movements were jerky, betraying his agitation. Ryan waited until Greg stood up and left the room before slipping inside. This wasn't the first time he'd sneaked into the office, but tonight felt different. The air seemed heavier, charged with an unspoken urgency. Ryan scanned the desk quickly, looking for anything unusual. That's when he spotted it. A folder lying partially open, its contents spilling onto the floor. Heart pounding, Ryan knelt down and began sifting through the papers. What he found made his blood run cold. Detailed records of inflated supplier. Invoices, forged receipts, and handwritten notes outlining price hikes confirmed his worst fears. Greg wasn't just hiking menu prices. He was systematically siphoning money from the company by creating fake transactions. The scale of the fraud was staggering. Knowing he couldn't take the original documents without raising suspicion, Ryan pulled out his phone and started snapping photos. He worked quickly, his hands trembling slightly as he captured each page. Every second felt like an eternity, and he kept glancing toward the door, half expecting Greg to walk in at any moment. Just as Ryan finished photographing the last sheet, he heard footsteps approaching. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to stay calm. Grabbing the mop, he stood up and pretended to clean the corner of the room. A few seconds later, Greg appeared in the doorway, frowning. "What are you doing here?" Greg asked sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Cleaning," Ryan replied simply, gesturing to the mop in his hand. "Thought I'd tidy up while I was finishing my rounds." Greg studied him for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a dismissive wave, he said, Make it quick and don't touch anything on my desk. Ryan nodded, feigning obedience. Once Greg turned his back and returned to his seat, Ryan resumed his task, careful not to linger too long. As soon as he was done, he slipped out of the office and retreated to the supply closet, where he reviewed the photos he had taken. The evidence was damning. Not only did the documents prove Greg's involvement in the price-hiking scheme, but they also revealed the names of several suppliers who appeared to be complicit in the fraud. Ryan realized this went beyond just one person. It was a network of corruption stretching far beyond the cafeteria walls. Over the next few days, Ryan continued gathering information, piecing together the full scope of the operation. He noticed patterns in how Greg handled shipments, always inspecting certain boxes personally and storing them in a locked cabinet. One night, unable to resist his curiosity, Ryan used a spare key he had borrowed from the supply room to unlock the cabinet. Inside, he found stacks of cash bundled neatly alongside more forged invoices. Meanwhile, tensions between Greg and Megan reached a boiling point. Their arguments became louder and more frequent, often spilling into public areas of the cafeteria. One evening, while Ryan mopped nearby, he overheard Megan threaten to expose Greg if he didn't give her a cut of the profits. "You'll regret crossing me," Greg snapped, his voice low and dangerous. "If you say a word to anyone, you're finished," Megan shot back defiantly. "Try me. See what happens when upper management finds out about your little scam." The exchange sent chills down Ryan's spine. He knew Greg was desperate, and desperate people were unpredictable. If Megan followed through on her threat, it could force Ryan to reveal his identity prematurely. On the other hand, if Megan backed down, Greg might grow even bolder, expanding his fraudulent activities. Determined to act before things spiraled further out of control, Ryan decided to confide in Lisa. They had developed a rapport over the past weeks, and he trusted her enough to share some of what he had uncovered. Late one night, after everyone else had gone home, Ryan pulled Lisa aside in the break room. "I need to show you something," he said quietly, pulling out his phone. He opened the gallery and showed her the photos of the forged invoices and stolen supplies. Lisa's eyes widened in shock as she scrolled through the images. This is insane," she whispered, shaking her head. "How did you even find all this?" "I've been watching Greg for a while now," Ryan admitted. "He's been stealing from the company, hiking prices and pocketing the difference. But I can't stop him alone. I need your help." Lisa hesitated, clearly torn. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, but we have to be careful. If Greg catches wind of this, he'll destroy us." Ryan agreed wholeheartedly. Together, they devised a plan to gather even more concrete proof. Lisa suggested keeping tabs on Megan, reasoning that her volatile relationship with Greg might lead to a breakthrough. Meanwhile, Ryan would focus on documenting everything related to the suppliers named in the forged invoices. Their collaboration paid off sooner than expected. A few nights later, Ryan overheard another confrontation between Greg and Megan. This time, Megan stormed out of the office, visibly upset. Sensing an opportunity, Ryan approached her cautiously. "Hey, Megan," he said gently. "You okay? You look like you could use a break." Megan glanced at him warily but nodded. "Yeah, I'm fine, just tired of dealing with Greg's nonsense." Ryan seized the moment. "I know what you mean. He's not exactly easy to work with. Is everything all right?" For a moment, Megan hesitated. Then, lowering her voice, she confessed, "He's been messing with the numbers, skimming off the top. I tried calling him out, but he threatened me. Said he'd make sure I lost my job if I told anyone." Ryan listened intently, nodding sympathetically. "That's rough. Have you thought about reporting him?" "I want to," Megan admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "But I don't know who to trust. Everyone seems scared of him." Ryan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Maybe you don't have to do it alone. Let me help you." Though skeptical at first, Megan eventually agreed to cooperate. With her testimony and the evidence Ryan had collected, they now had a strong case against Greg. All that remained was deciding how to present it. As Ryan reviewed the photos and notes one final time, he felt a mix of relief and apprehension. He had uncovered the truth, but exposing it would require revealing his own secret. The thought of stepping out of the shadows and reclaiming his role as CEO filled him with both excitement and dread. Still, he reminded himself why he had started this journey in the first place: to protect the company, its employees, and its customers from greed and dishonesty. With newfound resolve, Ryan prepared for the next phase of his mission. The pieces were falling into place, and soon, justice would prevail. Ryan knew he was running out of time. With Megan on board and Lisa by his side, the pieces were finally coming together, but every passing day brought new risks. Greg's behavior grew increasingly erratic, and his arguments with Megan became louder and more frequent. It was only a matter of time before someone tipped him off, or worse, before he decided to cut ties entirely and disappear with the evidence. That night, Ryan called a secret meeting in the supply closet. It wasn't ideal, but it was the safest place they could talk without being overheard. Lisa arrived first, carrying a flashlight to illuminate the cramped space. Megan followed shortly after, her face pale and drawn. She looked like she hadn't slept in days, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched a folder filled with receipts and notes she had managed to gather. "All right," Ryan began, keeping his voice low but firm. "We need to get everything in order before we take this to the top. We have enough evidence now, but we have to make sure it's bulletproof." Lisa nodded, setting the flashlight down on a shelf so its beam illuminated the center of the room. "What do you need from us?" she asked. Ryan spread the documents across a makeshift table, a stack of cleaning supplies, and pointed to the photos he had taken of Greg's forged invoices. "These are solid proof of what he's been doing, but we need more context, dates, times, specific examples of how he manipulated prices or skimmed money, anything that ties him directly to the fraud." Megan hesitated, then opened her folder and pulled out several pages. "I've been documenting everything I could find," she said softly. "Every time he adjusted an invoice or changed the pricing system, I wrote it down. I didn't know what else to do." Ryan scanned the notes, impressed by her attention to detail. "This is good," he said. "Really good. Combined with what Lisa and I have collected, it should be enough to build a strong case." But even as he spoke, doubts lingered in the back of his mind. Presenting this evidence would mean stepping out of the shadows and revealing his true identity. He couldn't keep pretending to be a janitor forever, especially not once accusations started flying. And if Greg fought back, which he almost certainly would, Ryan needed to be prepared for the fallout. "We'll need backup," Ryan said, finally. "Someone outside the cafeteria who can verify our findings and support us if things go south." Lisa frowned. "Who can we trust? If word gets out about what we're doing, Greg might try to cover his tracks. Or worse." Ryan thought for a moment, then reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "There's someone I can contact," he said. "She works at headquarters and has access to resources we don't. Her name's Nicole." He quickly typed out a message, careful not to include too many details. "Need your help. Can you look into some supplier records for me? Urgent." Within minutes, Nicole replied, "Sure thing. What's going on?" Ryan hesitated, then decided to give her just enough information to start digging. Suspicious activity involving inflated invoices. Suppliers listed might be fake or compromised. Let me know what you find. As he put the phone away, Megan glanced at him curiously. "Who's Nicole?" "She's a friend," Ryan replied evasively. "If anyone can dig deeper into this, it's her." The group spent the rest of the evening organizing their evidence, cross-referencing dates and amounts, and piecing together a timeline of Greg's activities. By the time they finished, the supply closet was a mess of papers, photos, and scribbled notes. Exhausted but determined, they agreed to reconvene the following night to finalize their plan. The next day, Nicole sent Ryan a series of messages detailing her findings. Several of the suppliers listed in Greg's invoices didn't exist, or, if they did, their addresses led to empty lots or abandoned warehouses. Others had connections to shell companies known for laundering money. It was clear that Greg hadn't acted alone. He had partners helping him orchestrate the scheme. Armed with this new information, Ryan felt confident they could take action. That evening he met with Lisa and Megan again, this time in the break room where they had more space to spread out their materials. As they reviewed Nicole's report, Ryan outlined the steps they needed to take. First, he said, we'll compile all the evidence into a single file, photos, notes, supplier records, everything. Then we'll present it to regional management during their inspection visit next week. They won't be able to ignore hard proof like this. Megan bit her lip nervously. What if Greg tries to deny it, or blames one of us instead? He won't have a chance, Ryan assured her. Not with the amount of documentation we have. Besides, once Nicole confirms the supplier links, there'll be no way for him to explain those away. Lisa chimed in, her voice steady. And if he does try to retaliate, we stick together. None of us backs down. Everyone nodded in agreement, though the tension in the room remained palpable. They all knew the stakes were high and failure wasn't an option. The days leading up to the inspection visit passed in a blur of preparation. Ryan worked tirelessly, ensuring every piece of evidence was organized and easy to understand. He also rehearsed what he would say when the time came to reveal his identity. It wouldn't be easy. He had spent weeks building trust as Evan, but it was necessary. Finally, the day arrived. Regional managers filed into the cafeteria early in the morning, clipboard in hand, ready to evaluate operations. Ryan watched from a distance as Greg greeted them with forced enthusiasm, pointing out improvements and glossing over potential issues. For a moment, Ryan almost felt sorry for him. Almost. When the managers requested a private meeting to discuss inventory discrepancies, Ryan saw his opening. He excused himself from mopping and approached Nicole, who had accompanied the team from headquarters. She gave him a subtle nod, signaling that she was ready. Inside the conference room, Greg sat confidently at the head of the table, flanked by two nervous assistants. The managers introduced themselves and began outlining their concerns about rising costs and customer complaints. Greg listened intently, occasionally interjecting with vague explanations about market fluctuations and supply chain challenges. Then Ryan stepped forward. At first, no one paid much attention to the janitor standing quietly near the door, but when he cleared his throat and said, "Excuse me, I think I can shed some light on this," all eyes turned to him. Greg's expression shifted instantly from confusion to suspicion. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "This doesn't concern you." Ryan ignored him and addressed the managers directly. "My name isn't Evan," he said calmly. "It's Ryan Carter. I'm the CEO of Fresh Choice Inc." A stunned silence fell over the room. Even Nicole raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the revelation. Greg's face turned bright red as realization dawned on him. You lied to us?" Greg stammered, glaring at Ryan. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been investigating," Ryan corrected him, "and what I found is unacceptable." He gestured to Nicole, who stood up and distributed copies of the compiled evidence to everyone at the table. As the managers flipped through the documents, their expressions grew darker. One of them looked up sharply. "Is this true, Mr. Thompson?" "Are these invoices legitimate?" Greg sputtered, trying to defend himself, but the weight of the evidence was overwhelming. When Nicole added her findings about the fake suppliers, any hope of denial evaporated. By the end of the meeting, Greg was escorted out of the cafeteria by security, his career in ruins. Megan broke down in tears, apologizing for ever doubting. Ryan, while Lisa simply smiled, relieved that the truth had finally come to light. For Ryan, it was a bittersweet victory. He had uncovered corruption and restored integrity to the company, but at the cost of his anonymity. As he walked out of the cafeteria that evening, still wearing his janitor's uniform, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Sometimes, the hardest battles are fought in the shadows, but the rewards are worth it. The moment Ryan revealed his true identity as the CEO of Fresh Choice Inc., the entire dynamic of the meeting shifted. What had started as a routine inspection quickly turned into an explosive confrontation that left everyone stunned, including Greg, who now stood pale and speechless as the weight of the evidence crushed him. Ryan's voice remained calm and steady as he addressed the room. "Over the past few weeks," he began, "I've been working undercover to uncover inconsistencies in our pricing systems and inventory management. What I discovered goes far beyond simple errors or inefficiencies. It's systematic fraud." Gestured toward Nicole, who handed each manager a folder containing detailed reports, photographs, and supplier records. The documents painted a clear picture of Greg's scheme: inflated invoices, forged receipts, and partnerships with fake suppliers designed to siphon money from the company. As the managers flipped through the materials, their expressions hardened. One of them, a stern woman named Patricia, looked up sharply. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her tone icy, "do you have anything to say about these allegations?" Greg opened his mouth to respond but faltered, his usual confidence crumbling under the scrutiny. This isn't what it looks like," he stammered. "There must be some kind of mistake." "No mistakes here," Ryan interjected firmly. "We've verified everything. Your so-called suppliers don't exist, or if they do, they're linked to shell companies involved in financial crimes. You've been manipulating prices and pocketing the difference for months." Patricia glanced at her colleagues, then back at Greg. "Is this true?" she demanded. Greg's eyes darted around the room, searching for support but found none. His assistants avoided eye contact, clearly unwilling to defend him. Finally, he slumped in his chair, defeated. "All right, fine," he muttered bitterly. "I did it, but I wasn't acting alone. Someone higher up approved the invoices. I was just following orders." The room fell silent. Ryan exchanged a glance with Nicole, who raised an eyebrow skeptically. It was a desperate attempt to shift blame, but one that couldn't be ignored entirely. Could someone else at headquarters be involved? For now, though, the focus remained on Greg. "This investigation isn't over," Patricia declared. Standing up, she signaled to the security guards waiting outside the door. "Take Mr. Thompson to HR immediately. We'll determine the next steps from there." As Greg was led away, visibly humiliated, Ryan felt a mix of relief and unease. While the immediate threat had been neutralized, Greg's parting words lingered in his mind. Was there another layer to this corruption? One that reached even further than he had anticipated? Once the dust settled, Ryan gathered Lisa, Megan, and Nicole in the break room to debrief. Everyone seemed drained but triumphant, knowing they had played a crucial role in exposing the truth. "You were incredible," Ryan told Megan, who still looked shaken. "Without your courage, we might never have gotten this far." Megan managed a small smile. "I just wanted it to stop. Living with that secret was eating me alive." Lisa nodded in agreement. "Same here. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know how to prove it. You gave us a way to fight back." Ryan appreciated their gratitude, but he knew the real work was only beginning. "We've taken down one piece of the puzzle," he said. "But Greg mentioned someone higher up approving those invoices. That means we need to dig deeper to make sure no one else is involved." Nicole chimed in, pulling out her laptop. "I'll start running checks on all recent approvals and cross-reference them with employee records. If anyone else is implicated, we'll find them," Ryan agreed. "Good. And let's keep this between us for now. Until we know exactly how deep this goes, discretion is key." Over the next few days, Nicole worked tirelessly to trace the origins of the fraudulent invoices. Meanwhile, Ryan focused on damage control within the cafeteria. Customers needed reassurance that their trust hadn't been betrayed, and employees deserved transparency about what had happened. During a staff meeting, Ryan addressed the team directly. Standing at the front of the room in his usual suit, no longer disguised as a janitor, he explained the situation without revealing too many specifics. "What happened here was unacceptable," he said firmly. "It violated every principle this company stands for, but thanks to the bravery of a few individuals, we were able to catch it before it caused irreparable harm." He paused, scanning the faces of his employees. Some looked relieved, others angry, but all were listening intently. "Moving forward, we're implementing stricter oversight measures to ensure this never happens again. Fresh Choice is built on honesty and integrity, and I promise you, we will restore both." Applause broke out as Ryan finished speaking. Lisa caught his eye from across the room and gave him a subtle thumbs up. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to him. Behind the scenes, however, tension simmered. Nicole uncovered troubling patterns linking certain high-level executives to questionable financial decisions. One name kept appearing repeatedly: Marcus Hale, the CFO of Fresh Choice Inc. Known for his aggressive cost-cutting strategies, Marcus had always operated in the shadows, rarely interacting with lower-level staff. Now, Ryan wondered if his methods had crossed ethical boundaries. Determined to get answers, Ryan scheduled a private meeting with Marcus. When he entered the executive's office later that week, he found Marcus seated behind a massive mahogany desk, scrolling through emails on his computer. He looked up briefly, offering a curt nod. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" Marcus asked, his tone clipped. "I think you already know," Ryan replied, taking a seat without waiting for an invitation. "We've uncovered some irregularities in our financial records. Irregularities that point to your involvement." Marcus frowned, setting his pen down. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" Ryan slid a folder across the desk. Inside were copies of the forged invoices and supplier records, along with notes highlighting Marcus's signature on several approval forms. "Explain this," Ryan said simply. For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then, leaning back in his chair, he sighed heavily. "All right, fine. I signed off on those invoices because Greg promised they'd save us money in the long run. I didn't realize he was using them to line his own pockets." Ryan studied him carefully, searching for signs of deception. "And you expect me to believe that?" Marcus shrugged. "Believe what you want. But I'm telling the truth. If you're looking for accountability, start with Greg and whoever else he dragged into this mess." Though Ryan wasn't entirely convinced, he decided to let the matter rest, for now. Confronting Marcus publicly would require irrefutable evidence which they didn't yet possess. Instead, Ryan instructed Nicole to continue monitoring Marcus's activities closely, ensuring he didn't attempt to cover his tracks. In the weeks that followed, Ryan implemented sweeping changes to prevent future scandals. He promoted Lisa to assistant manager, recognizing her loyalty and dedication during the investigation. Megan received counseling and a transfer to a different department, allowing her to start fresh away from the toxic environment Greg had created. As for Ryan himself, the experience had changed him profoundly. Working undercover as a janitor had given him a unique perspective on the inner workings of his own company. He realized how disconnected leadership could become from day-to-day operations, and vowed never to let that happen again. One evening, as he locked up his office and prepared to leave for the night, Nicole appeared beside him, smiling. "Well, boss," she teased, "I guess we can add janitorial services to your resume." Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that again anytime soon." Together they walked out into the cool night air, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Though the road to recovery would take time, Ryan knew Fresh Choice was stronger because of the lessons learned, and for the first time in months, he felt hopeful about the future. The weeks following Greg's dismissal were a whirlwind of activity at Fresh Choice Inc. Ryan devoted himself to rebuilding trust within the company, starting with the cafeteria where it all began. He knew that actions spoke louder than words, so he rolled up his sleeves and worked alongside the staff, listening to their concerns and ideas. It wasn't just about fixing what had gone wrong. It was about creating a culture of honesty and accountability moving forward. One of Ryan's first steps was implementing stricter oversight measures. Every invoice, every supplier contract, and every pricing adjustment now required multiple levels of approval. An independent auditor was brought in to review financial records regularly, ensuring no corners could be cut without detection. These changes weren't popular with everyone, especially those who preferred operating in the shadows. But Ryan made it clear there would be zero tolerance for misconduct. To further restore customer confidence, Ryan announced a price rollback campaign. Menu items that had been artificially inflated returned to their original costs, accompanied by notices explaining the adjustments. Customers appreciated the transparency, and sales quickly rebounded as people returned to enjoy meals. they could trust. Lisa played a key role in these efforts, stepping into her new role as assistant manager with enthusiasm and determination. Her promotion sent a powerful message to the staff. Hard work and integrity were valued above all else. Under her leadership, the cleaning crew became more organized and efficient, setting an example for the rest of the team. Megan, too, found success in her new department, proving herself capable and reliable despite the challenges she'd faced. Ryan also took time to personally thank those who had helped uncover the truth. During a special ceremony held in the cafeteria, he presented Lisa and Megan with plaques recognizing their bravery and dedication. "Without you," he said, addressing the gathered employees, "we might never have uncovered the corruption happening right under our noses. You reminded us that even the smallest voices can make the biggest difference." The applause that followed was heartfelt and genuine. For the first time in months, the cafeteria buzzed not with tension, but with hope. Employees chatted openly, sharing stories and laughter over trays of freshly prepared food. The air felt lighter, freer, a testament to the healing power of honesty. Despite the progress, Ryan couldn't shake the lingering questions about Marcus Hale. Though Marcus denied any wrongdoing beyond signing off on Greg's fraudulent invoices, Ryan remained cautious. Nicole continued monitoring his activities closely, reporting back regularly with updates. So far, nothing concrete had surfaced, but Ryan vowed not to let his guard down. "Trust takes years to build and seconds to break," he told Nicole during one of their private meetings. "If Marcus thinks he can slide back into old habits, he's mistaken." Nicole nodded in agreement. "Don't worry, I've got my eyes on him. But honestly, I think he's learned his lesson, for now anyway." Ryan hoped she was right. Still, he decided to keep Marcus at arm's length, involving him only in decisions where his expertise was absolutely necessary. It wasn't punishment, it was protection, both for the company and for Marcus himself. As the weeks turned into months, life at Fresh Choice settled into a new rhythm. The scandal faded from headlines, replaced by positive news stories highlighting the company's renewed focus on ethics and customer satisfaction. Employees reported feeling more engaged and empowered, knowing their voices mattered. Even customers noticed the change, praising the improved service and transparent pricing. For Ryan, the experience had been transformative. Working undercover as a janitor had taught him lessons he never expected to learn. He saw firsthand how disconnects between leadership and frontline workers created opportunities for corruption, and how vital it was to bridge that gap. From then on, he made it a point to spend time in different departments, learning from employees at every level. One evening, after closing up the cafeteria, Ryan sat down with Lisa and Nicole to reflect on everything that had happened. They shared stories and laughed about the absurdity of Ryan posing as a janitor, though Lisa admitted she had always suspected something was off about Evan. "You were way too curious for a regular cleaner," she teased, grinning. "I figured you must have been some kind of corporate spy or something." Ryan chuckled. "Close enough, I guess," Nicole chimed in, raising an imaginary glass. "Here's to catching crooks, exposing corruption, and making sure this place stays squeaky clean, in more ways than one." They all laughed, the sound echoing through the empty cafeteria. Despite the challenges they'd faced, there was a sense of camaraderie among them, a bond forged through shared struggles and triumphs. Looking ahead, Ryan felt optimistic about the future. Fresh Choice wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was better, stronger, more resilient. By confronting its flaws head-on, the company had emerged stronger than before, and Ryan knew that as long as he kept listening, learning, and leading with integrity, Fresh Choice would continue to thrive. His way out that night, Ryan paused by the entrance and glanced back at the cafeteria. The lights were dimmed, casting soft shadows across the tables and chairs. In that quiet moment, he allowed himself to feel proud, not just of what they had accomplished, but of the people who had made it possible. With a final smile, Ryan stepped outside into the cool night air. His journey as Evan might have ended, but his mission to lead with honesty and humility was just beginning.